First things first, I wanted to take a second to thank you guys real quick. We passed the 20,000 subscriber mark. I think it was at the beginning of April. At the time, I set a goal to pass 23,000 subscribers by the end of May. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think we were going to make it. We fell off the algorithm at some point in April. The impressions tanked. YouTube stopped promoting the channel. But you guys, you continued sharing the content. You kept pushing the channel. You kept liking. You kept commenting on every video. I cannot tell you how much all of that helped. The YouTube algorithm noticed we got back on it in May. We have added over 2,000 new subscribers this month, and last night, we surpassed my original goal of 23,000 by the end of May. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Every like, every thumbs down, every comment, all of it matters. The more activity YouTube sees on the channel, the more likely they're going to keep pushing it. So, I want to thank all of you for getting me through a slow month in April and helping me rebound here in May. Hopefully by the end of the summer, we will be nearing 30,000 subscribers for the channel. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Just when I thought we were done with Lia Thomas, just when I thought I would never have to talk about this man ever again, from November or December until the end of March, it seemed like we were talking about Lia Thomas at least once a week at minimum. He was receiving all of this undeserved attention. Lia Thomas represents everything wrong with Gen Z. This generation, they seem to have this sense of entitlement, this sense of, I should be given everything without accomplishing anything. For 4 months, both the mainstream media and Lia Thomas were strangely silent. ESPN refused to acknowledge Lia Thomas existed. The New York Times, The Washington Post, USA Today refused to cover Lia Thomas. There was so much outrage, not fake outrage. I'm talking about legit outrage. There was so much outrage surrounding Lia Thomas, the propaganda machine within the mainstream media, they couldn't figure out how to defend him. And there was a reason for that. There is no defending the indefensible. No amount of media propaganda and bullshit could convince a majority of the population that it is okay for a man to compete athletically against a woman. For months, there has been silence from Lia Thomas in the mainstream media. Now, all of a sudden, the silence has been broken. Now, all of a sudden, that championships have been stolen, dreams have been crushed. Now Lia Thomas wants to step up and defend his bullshit. You didn't have the balls to defend yourself when your story was relevant. You didn't have the balls to defend your bullshit when the eyes of America were on you. No. You waited over 2 months. You waited for the outrage to subside to come out and defend your position. That is the definition of courage. I don't want to hear any more bullshit about Lia Thomas being courageous. This man is a coward. Courage is facing the backlash head on and defending your position. Even though there is no defending this, even though I wouldn't have agreed with anything he said, at least I could have respected Lia Thomas if he had faced this outrage and adversity as it was happening. But I have no respect for this cowardly bullshit waiting 2 months to address this situation. This morning, Lia Thomas granted an interview to ESPN and ABC. Oh, it was filled with hard-hitting questions. The ESPN portion, it looks to be a special for Outside the Lines. The interview was conducted by Katie Barnes. It was 2 freaks in the same room in a competition to see who could be the most repulsive. The ABC portion of the interview, it was conducted by Juju Chang, who plays the role of journalist. There was no journalism between ESPN and ABC during this interview with Lia Thomas. Hell, ESPN tried to paint Lia Thomas as this delicate little victim. We're going to play portions of the interview here. I watched all 10 minutes several times, so you wouldn't have to waste your time on this stupidity. This first part that I'm going to share with you actually has nothing to do with Lia Thomas. It is an example of the subtle methods the mainstream media uses to get you accustomed to accepting this as normal behavior. I want you to see if you can catch what I'm talking about. Roll the clip.
Assigned male at birth, Thomas grew up in Austin, Texas, where she says she fell in love with swimming when she was just 4. But as she grew, she says she felt increasingly disconnected to her body.
Did you catch it? It was subtle. It was subtle. Juju Chang says Lia Thomas was assigned her male gender at birth. Who fucking talks like that? When you're assigned something, it's a choice. You have a choice. You either complete the assignment or you refuse to do it. Gender is not a choice. You're either a man or a woman. No amount of surgery is going to change that for you. What Juju Chain just did, that is an example of conditioning, grooming. Just like we talk about these sick teachers grooming children, the mainstream media is trying to groom us. They are trying to create an atmosphere where people like Lia Thomas are considered to be normal. This is not normal behavior. The interview, it then moves to the reason why Lia Thomas transitioned. Now, this was breaking news to me. I was unaware Lia Thomas had fully transitioned. All this time, I thought Will Thomas simply identified as transgender. There is a huge difference between identifying as transgender and actually being transgender. Huge difference. In one scenario, you dress like a woman but still pee standing up. In the other scenario, you dress like a woman and have extra skin to fill up your bra. In one scenario, you could possibly begin to look and sound like a woman. In the other, you still sound like a fucking man but continue pretending like you don't have a propeller. I hate this propeller. I dream of the day I can bury this fucking nuisance in the backyard next to my jockstrap. Check out the reason Lia Thomas claims other people transition. Not him. Not him. He's still a dude. He's explaining why others transition. Roll the film.
Trans people don't transition for athletics. We transition to be happy and authentic and our true selves. Transitioning to get an advantage is not something that ever factors into our decisions.
You didn't transition to win more medals?
No.
You see why I say this was a softball interview? Juju Chang follows up the obvious statement that trans people don't transition for athletic prowess. She follows up that obvious statement with the question, so you didn't transition to win medals? The obvious follow-up question should have been, have you fully transitioned? Better yet, were you fully transitioned before you started competing against other women? But KC, that's a personal question. Don't you think it was personal when Lia Thomas was stealing championships from women who had trained their whole lives to win them? Don't you think that was personal? It's not a personal question, it's the obvious question. Lia Thomas still sounds like a damn man. He still looks like a man. Any real journalist would have asked that simple follow-up. But not in today's mainstream media. No. They're too worried about Lia Thomas's feelings. Fuck Lia Thomas's feelings. You put yourself in this situation. I have no sympathy for you. But moving on. Juju Chang. She then brings up the letter written to Penn and the NCAA by numerous female athletes expressing their outrage over Lia Thomas being allowed to compete. Watch for yourself.
Thomas quickly became a lightning rod. 16 of her own teammates and some of their parents wrote anonymous letters arguing Thomas posed a threat to women's sports.
The women who signed the letter anonymously said that they absolutely supported your right to transition, but they simply think it's unfair for you to compete against cisgendered women.
You can't go halfway and be like, I support trans women and trans people, but only to a certain point, where if you support trans women as women, and they've met all the NCAA requirements, and then I don't know if you can really say something like that. Trans women are not a threat to women's sports.
First of all, what is with this cisgender bullshit? I get so tired of hearing people described as cisgender, cisgender. You know what we used to call people like that? Normal. 37 years on this earth, I had never heard of cisgender until a few months ago. I don't consider myself to be cisgender. I consider myself to be normal. If some woke therapist described me as cisgender, I'd take their woke you diploma off the wall and crack them over the head with it. Lia Thomas claims, you can't support me halfway. You can't support my right to transition, but not support my right to compete athletically. Yeah, we can. No one denies your right to fuck yourself up. If you want to chop off your wiener, put some relish and mustard on it, and call it a hot dog, go for it. No one gives a shit. The problem comes in when you start impacting the lives of others. We should not have to accommodate you because you're not comfortable with yourself. If you want to transition from man to woman and still compete in swimming, compete against the men. I don't think anyone would have a problem with that. No one is saying Lia Thomas can't compete. They don't want you competing against women because you're a dude. Since Lia Thomas says people can't support halfway, they either support 100% or none, fine. Okay, I don't support you. One of the many reasons I don't support you, you're full of shit. You claim trans women aren't a threat to women's sports.
What reaction do you have toward other folks who feel that you shouldn't be able to compete?
I disagree. Trans women competing in women's sports does not threaten women's sports as a whole, because trans women are a very small minority of all athletes, and the NCAA rules regarding trans women competing in women's sports have been around for 10 plus years. And we haven't seen any massive wave of trans women dominating.
I have seen several in the mainstream media point out the fact that the NCAA has had rules for transgender athletes for 10 years, and no one's had an issue with this until Lia Thomas. There have been trans athletes for a decade, and women's sports are thriving. That is a lie. There may have been guidelines from the NCAA for a decade. There may have been one, maybe two trans athletes in the past 10 years. But this has never been socially acceptable. Today, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make this acceptable. Think about the abundance of trans athletes that we have seen just in the last few months. You had that biker in England transition from male to female to compete against women. Thankfully, they didn't allow it to happen. We talked about that skateboarder last week. We have seen several cases at the high school level. We had scary-looking Laurel Hubbard in the Olympics last summer. Remember Quinn? The dude from Canada that was allowed to play on the women's soccer team in the Olympics? They are trying to normalize this behavior. Lia Thomas doesn't even realize it, but he is being used by the mainstream media to promote a twisted agenda. They are not just blurring the concept of gender. They want to completely remove gender identity. I've explained this to you before, the whole idea behind this. There are many facets that form your identity. Your job, your family, your personal relationships, money, your religion. All of these form just a piece of who you are. But the foundation of your identity is your gender. It starts with your gender, something that you have never had to question until now. These sick fucks, they are trying to raise a generation of kids confused about their gender. If they can get them to question their gender, to be confused about their gender, they lay the foundation for them to believe in nothing. When you believe in nothing, you don't feel like you have a purpose. When you don't have a purpose, you have no self-esteem or self-worth. And when you have no self-worth, you're reliant on someone else to provide it for you. I have nothing against Lia Thomas personally. I'm against what he represents. He does not represent progress. He represents the moral decaying of society. A society without morals not sustainable. And that is exactly what the sick woke fucks want. They want our current system to be viewed as unsustainable so they can tear it down and rebuild the country in their utopian image. But let me know what you think. Lia Thomas, the mainstream media, silent for months. They wait 2 months to defend the indefensible. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.